Bernard de Montreal. Preparatory Communication Number 43. Solar Initiation. Solar initiation is the opening of contact between man and extraordinary intelligences, which constitutes the ultimate psychological test of the Earth, because this test points towards the elevation of human intelligence above all that man has believed he has understood since the beginning of his evolution. Solar initiation can only be experienced in relation to the extraordinary intelligence that animates each individual and that constitutes the most absolute of man's psychological experiences. For it cannot be generated by him or his spiritual methods, but by the ray in him that works under the cover of his subjective thought. Solar initiation is the new condition of man, the starting point towards a psychological unknown that is absolutely distinct from the psychological content that expresses the totality of his experimental consciousness. This psychological unknown is the product of the continuous rapprochement of the ray of intelligence that penetrates the mind of man and invests it with a new power on the globe. That of being able to know. But man does not know the power to know, does not know its aspects and arcans, so that his learning becomes more and more an unveiling in his mind. Solar initiation protects the mind of man but destroys the curiosity of his intellect, in order to increase in him the vibration of the mind, that is to say, of that consciousness in him which manages, according to the mode of his expression, to dominate everything that concerns him closely, that is, what he becomes aware of. The purpose of solar initiation is to generate enough vibrational energy on the Earth to increase the vibratory rate of planetary consciousness, so that man can come into contact with his brothers in space. But solar initiation does not commit any man to immortality, unless he can experience all its aspects, all its power of penetration and transformation. The man of tomorrow will experience two major possibilities on Earth. Either to eventually move on to the circle of Tibetan initiates, or to move beyond that circle, in order to form a new one that will become the new center of energy and service for future humanity. The conditions of one passage or another depend on several life factors that can only be highlighted by the evolutionary paths followed by each. But the universal nature of solar initiation is part of the experience of the two passages. Solar initiation is a process of vibratory change that alters the very substance of man's subtle bodies. Once the substance of the body has been altered, man can no longer live his material life according to the canon of past experiences. And this new state predisposes him to experience, at the end of the cycle, the passage of a radiant energy that will alter his total consciousness, so that he will be sucked into a field of force opening the doors of the parallel worlds, so that his present life will be lived more and more according to this more or less near future. The fundamental key to life granted by solar initiation is a masterpiece of pure intelligence, for it is based on the close relationship between cosmic and human thought, so that a bridge is gradually built between man and the extraordinary intelligences that cap human experience. This key cannot be lost when it is perceived, but its development depends on each being, each man who has become aware of it. But the future of the solar man is suitable for all men of high inner intelligence. This is why the planetary man, when receiving this key, gradually becomes a marginal being, because the vibration of the key predisposes him more and more to live according to this vibration. And it is the development of this vibration that will allow man to join one or the other of the two great science centers of humanity, one located in the Himalayas and the other in the great depths of the Atlantic. The presence on Earth of snowmen and dolphins is a profound condition of the links between Himalayan and Atlantic ether. Snowman protects the etheric space of the Himalayas, and the dolphin will protect the Atlantic ether. These intelligent but primitive beings have been protected for very long periods of evolution in order to serve, in the near future, those who will have to penetrate these ethers. Snowman is already at the service of man in the Himalayas, and the dolphin will fulfill its function when man begins to penetrate the Atlantic ether. As in the case of the snowman, the dolphin will be under the surveillance of the Atlantic men. The intervention in the human affairs of these primitive Atlantic beings will be beneficial, because the friendship of the new initiates will be manifest under the cover of their presence. While in the Himalayas it is only the hidden presence of the initiates that manifests itself. We bring these unusual details in order to make the new man recognize the need to free himself from the conceptions he may have of the possible, in order to open his mind to the nature of reality which does not always suit the canon of the law of the material plane. Solar initiation undertakes in man to destroy all notion of the material plane in order to gradually introduce it at the meeting point between pure intelligence and the intelligence of the senses. The intelligence of the senses is a primitive intelligence, because it predisposes man to what he sees and not to what is real behind the veil of the senses. The laws of life are not dictated by the senses or compressed by reason, but dictated by extraordinary intelligence and confirmed in the extrasensory experience of man. While solar initiation generates intelligence in man, this same intelligence can never be perceived by the lower mind of man, because its very nature rejects that which disturbs the balance between thought and senses. And it is precisely the imbalance between the senses and subjective thought that constitutes the exhausting experience of the new man. While the extraordinary intelligence in him works to penetrate the thick layers of the lower mind, the other dimensions of man come together to eventually form a whole with the physical body, which naturally allows man to penetrate the ether of his choice. Solar initiation is suitable for those who are already engaged in their minds in search of the other side of the mountain. And it is only the vibration of this commitment that allows man to predispose himself to the occult nature on the other side of the veil, to the nature of things beyond matter and the senses. The human being is a component of life plans that must be connected as a whole, in order to allow him to pass from one world to another. Otherwise he is doomed to material death. Solar initiation is the beginning on earth of the representation of the different faces of man. And this representation is so excessively in tune with the physical senses of man that he is forced to fight during the initiation. And those who can live this experience and discover a new balance will be counted among the initiates of the sixth race. Some will go to the Himalayan center. Those who have had the strength to escape the psychological effect of their senses on their intelligence. The others, who will have totally exceeded the power of their intelligence over extraordinary intelligence, will move towards the Atlantic Center, seat of science and invisible earth government. The last group will represent the highest human hierarchy on Earth. And these beings will be the bridge between man and the men of space. The first group will continue to evolve and spiritually help humanity. The profound difference between Himalayan and Atlantic ether is based on the relationship between human intelligence and extraordinary intelligence. Not all men can live the solar initiation according to the laws of extraordinary intelligence, because a particular link with this intelligence can only be developed through certain life experiences that are already part of each person's life plan. This is why the greatest number of those who experience solar initiation will be sucked into the Capricorn tunnel or corridor. The passage of the solar man through the Capricorn corridor will teach him in the science of errors, so that he can in the future recognize the differences between error and extraordinary intelligence. Not all solar men will have the discernment that is essential to penetrate the Atlantic ether. That is why they will have to be sucked into the Himalayan ether. This consideration is of major importance. And this is why the new man, although assured of passing from one plane to another, cannot be assured of passing from the center of knowledge, i.e., the Himalayan center, to the center of science, i.e., the Atlantic center. The importance of solar initiation cannot be disputed, since these two centers of future earthly life can only be inhabited by those who have exceeded a lower level of consciousness, and who can undergo an increase in their vibratory rate according to the mode of reception assigned to them by their connection, more or less close, with the extraordinary intelligence that can manifest itself through one center or another of energy. Now the extraordinary intelligence in man is the activity of the ray assigned to each man, and already recorded beforehand in the fluid intelligence of the cosmic centers of the planet. It is this link with the fluid intelligence of the earthly occult centers that will allow the new man to be sucked into the Capricorn corridor. For those who will go towards the Himalayan ether, and into another corridor for the others. The fluid intelligence of these centers is sufficiently present and powerful on Earth to reveal itself to the new man from time to time, in order to make him realize that he does not belong to the physical planetary race but to the invisible planetary race. And this realization is always done according to the reception center open to this energy. Whatever the reception center, it can change according to the evolution of the solar man. That is, according to his greater or lesser proximity to the extraordinary intelligence. It is normal for some to perceive the Himalayan intelligence fluid first, then lose consciousness of it in order to later sense the Atlantic intelligence fluid. This change then causes an internal crisis big enough for man to suffer from identity. This suffering of identity can be acute and depressing, because the rejection of the astral body is accentuated to the point of a total loss of interest in living in matter, without wishing death itself but the calm it brings. But this calm must be lived on the material level. Otherwise it is the product of astral consciousness. That is, of emotion and not of extraordinary intelligence. The new man who is attached to the Atlantic center must be able to live the calm of the extraordinary intelligence while he is still in the matter. Otherwise he predisposes himself to the astral influence that radiates from the Himalayan center and calls towards him those who are great in heart but weak in the extraordinary intelligence. Solar initiation is the passage from the plane of human consciousness to the superhuman consciousness of the planetary ether. And the order of its evolution coincides with the gradual rejection of the veils that compose the experimental consciousness, and that prevent man from having access to the different planes of light that constitute the scaffolding of the parallel worlds, the invisible worlds. However, only the extraordinary intelligence of man can destroy these veils, because it alone possesses the vibration of the ray to which each human being is assigned. The vibration of the ray being indeed the energy of the extraordinary intelligence. It is enough for the man who is conscious to become more and more conscious of it to escape more and more from the influence of his senses on his intelligence. This hold is much more powerful than man can imagine. And that is why everything that comes to him at the beginning of extraordinary intelligence seems unlikely to him or the trickery of certain spirits. But this is not so. For extraordinary intelligence can only manifest itself when man is ready and able to receive it. While man may be prey to unhealthy spirits, he cannot be prey to extraordinary intelligence, for it does not come to him unless he is ready to receive it. Solar initiation increases man's ability to receive this intelligence, and that is why every man who is the beneficiary of it advances little by little towards one of the life centers of the planet. Those who institute solar initiation on Earth, those who present it to man in one form or another, cannot give it to man, because it manifests itself according to the ray in him and cannot be related to any form of teaching or other. Solar initiation is a path where all the paths of man end. Those who live it, whatever their point of origin, recognize it, because it takes them further towards real intelligence, outside the spiritual limits of man. Whatever the starting point, it closely follows the entire evolution of humanity. Where men have lived in groups the salutary effects of spiritual consciousness, they will live alone the solar initiation, without the external support of a teaching. Whatever the level of spiritual or philosophical experience of man, it will be left behind in the dust of human memory. When the ray carrying the extraordinary intelligence enters the mind of man in order to install there the foundation of the cosmic being who cannot be hindered by psychology or philosophy or human spirituality. Solar initiation, as it must be experienced by 20th century man, is the product of the connection with what is understood only by, or according to, extraordinary intelligence. No man can resist it if it presents itself, and no man can take it by simple desire. It is a vibratory phenomenon whose origin remains hidden from mortals until it is within the enclosure of the light of the earth. If man can coexist for long periods of life without realizing the light of the earth, it is because the ray in him has not reached the very center of his intelligence. This has the effect of maintaining the supremacy of the senses over his mind. But as soon as this ray penetrates, the eyes of man open and his spirit begins to grow. Until the day when the forces of life that hold power can show him the way to the great depths where the God-men are established. Those men who are no longer commanded, but who command, because they have in them the power of the light that must serve them so that they can see to the evolution of the globe and the harmony of its different forms of life. The exclusion of man from solar initiation is not a choice, but a condition of life already pre-established on another level of evolution. It must be understood that all men are attached to any planet, and that some have not yet evolved enough to benefit fully from it. Only when they have spent enough time on their respective planets can they become part of the immortals of the earth. Opportunity is not the point. Opportunity is the product of an evolutionary plan already established before birth so that man can know his destiny. Whatever the ultimate relationship between the material man and the immortal, the destiny of one is only the inevitability of the other. And any man who goes to the other already knows that he is different and that he must not die. The mystery of the solar initiation is similar to the reality of the atom. However, the atom is not only an energy particle, but also a vast field of light. Man does not know the light field of the atom, but only the force released from the center. Now the energy field of the atom comes from perfection in time, from the ray or from the extraordinary intelligence. So that a man who is in the process of initiation is entering the field of light of the atom. And it is this field of light that constitutes the corridor that brings him to the center of knowledge or cosmic science. Now the atom in man is a point in him that perfectly coincides in vibration with the ray. And where the ray enters through this point, there is a vibration of a certain order. So that man passes from one plane to another without having to experience the destruction of his material body. The contact between the ray and the atom in man creates in man a gaze, a vision, and it is this gaze, this vision, which now allows him to live on another scale of evolution, because nothing can oppose it any more, neither the dense matter, nor the astral. The atom of man is made up of 7 layers of energy, connected to emanation centers, through which the ray of extraordinary intelligence passes. And this atom is 7 times more powerful than each energy center in man. So that the total being of man is a multiple of 7. This is why the effort of the spiritual man to make one of the centers, one of the 7 centers, vibrate is a limited temporary effort, because the real man is 7 times more powerful than the activity of an energy center. And any spiritual activity aimed at igniting one of these centers is only a reflection of man seeking to become what is already 7 times greater than what he can't seek to do spiritually. Now the powers of man must be liberated by the ray, and not stirred by his body of desire. What man calls God is not discoverable by the activity of one of the 7 centers, but by the activity of the 7 centers under the power and control of the ray of creation. The greatness of man is veiled, even to the one who makes one of his centers vibrate, because the real man, the cosmic man, is the result of the fusion of the ray with the 7 centers. Man will one day discover that his 7 centers correspond to the 7 layers of what he calls the soul, and that these 7 layers must be energetically integrated into his principles, so that this energy can serve him when he is free in spirit, that is, master of life. When man has experienced the solar initiation, he will discover that what he calls God is in fact a multiple of 7 of what he is, and that this multiple has other multiples, so that 7 times this multiple increases the vibration in him, and so on. And that the more a being can live from the multiple of 7, the closer he gets to the absolute, that is, the science of intelligence, and that when he gets closer to this science, he discovers other aspects that bring him even closer to it, which leads him more and more towards the absolute of absolutes. And this is how man advances in the light and advances in the perfection of the worlds of light. There is no end. The real man is endless. And the spirit of man is the most real aspect of himself. So that man is consciousness whose multiple is vibratory. I. E. Energetic. And it is energy that is the manifestation of intelligence. And it is intelligence that is the beauty of what man calls God. For in beauty, man discovers love. Because love is the essence of perfection. And when man knows intelligence and love, because he is perfecting himself, the will descends on earth. Because the energy is committed to correcting the experience so that the experience becomes more and more perfect. So that man lives and evolves towards perfection. Solar initiation is the gift of intelligence to man. It raises him from the dust of unconscious experience. But its price is great. Because man is great. And everything great must be made perfect. Otherwise he must die. That is, wait in a world where life is only the long memory of past experience, lived without ceasing, until the dead being knows the real life, that of the ray that animates all planes, even matter. Solar initiation cannot be experienced by all men of the same period. For it already reflects an evolution that has long been committed by the being who must one day, on this earth, know what has always been veiled to man. This initiation serves as a springboard for man to ensure the continuity of consciousness, which in this case should be called the consciousness of appearances. However, appearances are the empty forms that circulate in the time of the spirit of the earth, and that have been deposited by the brothers of man who live at the ends of its solar system. However, these forms must one day be used by the man of the earth. But they can only be used when the ray of creation, that is, the ray of ceremonial magic, has penetrated human consciousness and separated the bodies of man without dividing them. Then those who have experienced solar initiation will have the power to recognize these luminous forms and merge with them, thus establishing for the first time on Earth the Great Circle of the Atlantic. This circle will be more powerful than anything on Earth that constitutes power. That is why there will be no possibility of war for a certain period of time, because the sons of light will be in ascension. As long as the solar initiation is given to man, the rate of consciousness will increase on the globe. And when this initiation ceases, the earth will once again be in the throes of a battle between light and its opposite. The solar initiation cannot be stopped on Earth as long as there are men marked to receive it. This initiation will mark the intervention in the history of humanity of cosmic forces. And its influence will be incalculable. because the ego or the man who will be touched by it will be totally transformed according to its vibratory relationship with the energy that it will penetrate into it as it advances into the intelligence of reality. The laws of matter must be perfectly known to man, so that his spirit may be freed from them, so that he can travel through time and discover the high places of the governments that lead evolution, and intervene in silence in the evolution of all forms of life. Man must participate in the creative activities of these governments, and fully understand the mechanisms that order the evolution of his system. Otherwise he is doomed to ignorance and loss. For his intelligence cannot continue to develop without the internal support of a larger backdrop to which he belongs without realizing it. Solar initiation will destroy any form of symbolism which, in the past, has served the spiritual or philosophical evolution of man, in order to imprint on his mind the vibration of pure intelligence. And this vibration will be so powerful that man will no longer be able to think about what he knows, but will only be able to channel what he knows. Free of his subjective thought, he will have access to the mysteries of life, and his life will be totally transformed by them. The ether will open to him, and death will no longer be the shadow of his life. The solar initiation will coincide with a chain of events that will make life more and more difficult on the globe. For cosmic forces will disturb the balance of humanity in order to force mankind to recognize the existence, beyond matter, of intelligences that watch over its evolution and with whom it must collaborate in order to establish a new order of life on Earth. It is obvious that man cannot see without having undergone an enlargement of his mind. And it is only through the manifest power of cosmic forces that he can achieve certain things. Ignorance can only be overcome by the shock of events beyond its control. The solar initiation will coincide with the death and resurrection of the globe, under unimaginable conditions. Those who have the vision will easily live through these conditions. But humanity, at large, will be struck at the center of the heart, and its intelligence will be overwhelmed. The balance of the earth will be turned against man, so that even death will not be able to relieve him. For life continues after death, but in a world that will be troubled by the coming to earth of beings unrelated to death. And those who will be in death will see, for the first time since the beginning of their stay on the other side of the wall, that new life on earth is a paradise that they can only know through incarnation, and that this incarnation will be limited to the evolved level. The others will have to evolve on other levels in order to no longer delay the Earth's evolution. But even the dead will be prisoners of their condition, for the Earth will be ruled by the forces of light, and man will know the mysteries that have hidden his spirit in the past. solar initiation cannot be controlled, but it comes to earth. And man only receives it to the extent that his mind opens up to it. Man's planetary consciousness must no longer tremble before the light, for light is life and the cause of life. Today's man stands on his knees before the symbol of light. But tomorrow his mind will be so great that he will walk straight ahead by himself and penetrate a parallel world that the initiates have nicknamed the paradise of the earth. The spirit of man who opens himself to the breath of initiation must be strong and robust, because this initiation is that of the transformation of his bodies and the penetration behind the veil of matter. It is no longer a question of man being disturbed in his mind, but of living with his mind and being able to undergo without fear the light of intelligence that enters him every day, and which prepares him for the total consciousness of the material and suprasensible world. Man's thought can only become powerful when it is perfect. And it is only when he has got rid of all his prejudices that he can have access to his real intelligence, the essential key to any real life. The solar initiation leads to the other side of the mountain. It reveals what is not known in the world of reason. It gradually leads man towards the infinity of his spirit. It works unceasingly, day after day, and uses all the material of unconscious and imperfect life to build, strengthen the principles of man so that he can undergo the shock of the passage into the ether. The more power the Atlantic center grows in power, the more power the solar initiation increases, and the more its power is spread over the globe. If man can fake material senses by using certain techniques, such as cinema, prestidigitation, astral magic, imagine what the light and intelligence of this light, which holds power over everything that moves, from the atom to man, to the galaxy, can do. Is it natural that today's man should be so proud in his intelligence? The answer is positive. But life never proves man right, because life is greater than man and larger than his intelligence. This is why solar initiation is the great cry of life on Earth of the 20th century. The solar initiation will translate for man all the domains of his experience into real character. He will be able to understand everything of his life. Instead of living inside a dream, he will see his life unfold in a way that is consistent with his intelligence, and not according to external factors that are and have always been beyond his control. Life, in other words, will no longer escape him, for he will grow according to his own laws, and not according to egocentric conceptions that push man in every possible and imaginable direction, without him being able to understand its purpose instantly. Man will no longer be affected by life's events. He will watch them as he watches a film. That is, objectively, and will feel totally outside its unfolding. The new life that grows, when man lives the solar initiation, is more and more real, according to the degree of will and intelligence that grows in him. Not all men have the same capacity to live, to vibrate from the ray in them, from their intelligence and will. But whatever the degree of the relationship with the ray, man becomes perfectly aware of it. So that his consciousness of the ray allows him to live his life objectively. That is, without being subjectively involved in the lower mental or emotional level. He can then leave his material body at will. Because his intelligence and emotional power no longer have the power to prevent the material senses from interfering with another dimension of life, which we can call supramental life. The mutation of the new man will coincide with the greatest crisis that man has ever known, that of his contact with the beings of space, who have already conquered matter and perfectly understand the laws of life. These beings, whose presence on Earth will create the great shock to man's planetary consciousness, will mark man's first cosmic experience. And humanity, after this experience, will never again be what it was. That is, confused in its mind. Solar initiation is the great cry of new life on Earth. And man is the carrier of it. And he will bear in him the light. For he is light. And all that obstructs in him this light will be destroyed.